Someone dropped this video on X with a caption that basically said, "Sydney, Australia. These houses are not lit up for Christmas. They are lit up for Diwali. Just about everyone in this neighbourhood of Niriba Fields is Indian. The West has reached a pivotal moment. We must preserve our own culture before we lose it." The post immediately went viral, and people in the comments pushed back, saying, "That is the best example of hard-working people accepting Australia as their home and maintaining their culture while accepting Australian way of life. They live peacefully, lawfully, and contribute to the local economy. One important thing to remember, Indians celebrate all festivals." The original poster wrote, "If people choose to live in another country, they should assimilate to that country's culture, not import their own." That comment only poured more people into the thread. Soon, the argument shifted to a deeper question. What exactly does assimilate mean? And how far is it supposed to go? Last year, a giant Hanuman statue in Houston sparked a similar controversy. The poster wrote, "Gigantic 90-foot monkey statue unveiled in Houston, Texas." The Hanuman statue, officially named Statue of Union, was unveiled by the local Hindu community. It is now the third largest statue in the United States. Some said, "It's over. America has fallen." Someone even called the statue "false idols placed in Texas." One commenter, clearly annoyed, said, "God of wisdom, strength, courage, devotion, and self-discipline. What's the problem?" For Indians, it's culture or religious symbol. But for some of the locals, the feeling is different. They read it as a territorial claim. That anxiety is not really about lighting or stone. It is a demographic shift anxiety, a fear that the population is changing, and that the change might become permanent. You might remember Hanuman MP, elected in 2023 at age 23, one of New Zealand's youngest members of parliament and a Māori representative. In her first oath and public speeches, she opened with traditional Māori chanting and vocal calls, loud, forceful, ceremonial. Western media quickly framed it as a kind of shouting performance, and critics accused her of dragging tribal ritual into parliament and breaking formal decorum. At first glance, these three incidents seem unrelated. One is a festival light display, one is a religious statue, and one is a traditional ritual performed in parliament. But they triggered a broadly similar reaction in part of the majority culture. When a minority tradition enters a public and visible space, some people in the dominant group become unsettled. The discomfort isn't necessarily about the lights being too bright, the statue being too large, or the ritual, the chanting being too loud. If you strip away the vocabulary, the fear reads more like a map problem. Instead of a sound or color problem, they see a new label printed over an old map edge. Public space being renamed, redistributed, and re-explained. But the real question is, whose culture is allowed to be public, visible, and legitimate? I'm a new immigrant to the United States, and the logic is the same. To even be eligible for permanent residence or for future naturalization, immigrants are expected to assimilate on the civic level, not the cultural one. And the civic part is not vague. A newcomer must obey U.S. law and the constitutional framework, pay taxes and fulfill basic civic obligations, accept and not undermine the political system, have sufficient language ability to function in public life, not attempt to import or create another system on this soil. That is civic assimilation, the non-negotiable part. It means I must integrate into American system, not transplant another system in America. For that part, I'm fully willing and actively doing my part. But then there is cultural assimilation, the part some people think immigrants should do. Abandon your holidays, abandon your language, abandon your religion, abandon your aesthetics and identity, and replace them with the majority's way of life. That expectation is psychological, not legal. It's a demand of a nationalism, not a requirement of a democracy. In a free society, we are required to share the same laws, but not the same culture. And to be fair, I do understand those who oppose Diwali lights or Hanuman statue. Their reasoning basically goes like this. Public space is the identity of the community. If too much new culture comes, the dominant culture gets diluted. But too much is never defined. In practice, too much means more than what makes me comfortable. And in law, too much is a meaningless category. Only harm can be measured. All right, let's test that claim against how modern societies actually handle such conflicts. Typically, they apply 3 filters. Harm test. No harm, no ban. If it doesn't create measurable harm, no noise violations, no traffic chaos, no safety threats, no forced religious behavior, then visibility should be allowed. Consistency test. Same rule for everyone. If a city allows Christmas lights, Easter displays, Hanukkah menorahs, pride parades, then it must be willing to allow Diwali lights, Hanuman statues, Maori rituals. You judge by impact, not by origin. Look at what is done, not who is doing it. Procedural rule. Regulate, don't erase. Not majority emotions, but clear rules. Time limits for lights, height limits for statues, decibel limits for chants, permits and neighborhood notice. Who pays the cost? In other words, use technical rules instead of cultural exclusion. About the Hanuman statue, some people pointed out, it's at a private Hindu temple. It has nothing to do with liberals or local government or the rapture or devil worship. It's a private statue paid for and erected by a private temple. Stop being Karens about it. Freedom is what pulled me from China to America. I walked away from everything I had there, including a career I loved, because I believed in the freedom here, especially the First Amendment and its protection of religious freedom. I still remember the first time I saw the American president take the oath with his hand on a Bible. At first, I was confused. After all, Buddhists, atheists, Hindus, Muslims may have voted him into office too. Why only the Bible? Then I realized the president also has his own religious freedom. And that's when I understood something fundamental about this society. Between freedom and equality, Americans will always put freedom first. And here is the test. If this so-called freedom only applies to the majority, but not to newcomers, then it's not a value, it's a privilege. Of course, not everyone who objects to Diwali lights, Hanuman statues, or Maori chanting is anti-culture. Many are reacting to the accumulated irritation toward certain groups' behavior, not the symbols themselves. For example, Indians are often stereotyped as not following rules, taking over parking, being loud, refusing to integrate, which, to be fair, is not that different from how Chinese immigrants are often perceived. Criticism of Maori communities often comes from frustration with welfare dependence, identity politics, or claims of special status. Some of these complaints might be real. Some might be prejudice or projection. But one line must never be crossed. Judging people is not the same as stripping a culture of its right to exist in public. If someone blocks traffic, regulate traffic. If someone violates noise rule, enforce noise limits. If someone uses a festival to impose or exclude, use law to intervene. Solve behavioral problems with behavioral rules. Don't use a bulldozer to kill a mosquito. Don't punish an entire culture for the sins of individuals. Because once you start using cultural visibility as an outlet for your anger, you fall into a dangerous chain of logic. I dislike certain behaviors, therefore I oppose their culture. Therefore, I want them erased from the public space. At that point, it's no longer governance, it's elimination. And elimination is emotional revenge. The strength of the US, Australia, New Zealand is not measured by which symbols get to appear, but by whether the society remains stable when different symbols appear side by side. I'm not against Western societies defending order, tradition, and a shared civic baseline. In fact, it is precisely because I understand and fully respect those things that I chose to move here and build a life here. But my recognition of these values shouldn't require erasing myself. As an immigrant, I obey the law, I pay taxes, I respect the system, and I take on my obligations. On that foundation, I expect the same right to cultural expression, not hidden in a corner, but allowed to exist in daylight. I came here because this country wrote a sentence on the wall: all men are created equal. And because in practice, it places freedom above everything else. Now it's my turn to test. Is that sentence a principle or a slogan? Are freedom and equality for everyone, or just for those who look like you? If freedom and equality only apply to firstcomers, then they were not values, they were privileges. But if they apply when newcomers exercise them, then that is what civilization means. I came here because I believed in those values. Now I'm here to test if they apply to me. Well then, God bless America.